Hey, everybody watching from Ministry Oasis and all the other folks on social media that this is being broadcast to. Grateful that you've joined us today. I'm here with Stan Holder, who's the administrative bishop of the Church of God in Delmarva, D.C. That's Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, and the District of Columbia. And so I'm grateful for his shepherding of my life because he actually is my administrative bishop. And he's got a long history, not only as a minister, but also as an administrator in the church, and has seen lots of stuff over the years. And so I appreciate him bringing all that to bear as we talk about attrition in ministry and its causes and potential preventative measures. So Stan, why don't you just take a moment, greet folks, and then we'll get into our first question.
Well, thanks, Pastor Steve. I appreciate so much the opportunity to be with you today and to talk about a subject that's dear to my heart. You know, Teresa and I we have just begun our 40th year of ministry together. And we started out years ago as youth pastors and moved around the country in state leadership, and then went into a senior pastor role, served as an evangelist for a while, and now administrative bishop. And so we've been able to kind of get a good balance, of ministry from many different angles. And so as this discussion today is something that is dear to me and to Teresa, and I just hope that, I can say something or guide individuals in a direction that's going to be beneficial. So thanks for letting me be a part of it.
Well, I hope so too, because you have not only been among the trenches or in the trenches of local church ministry, but you've also moved in your ministry career and calling into a more mentoring, shepherding of shepherds, pastoring of pastors, ministering to ministers kind of experience. Do you see the attrition in ministry, ministers getting out of ministry, as more of an issue now than it was 20 or 30 years ago? How do you see that?
Well, to give you the short answer, I think it is increasing, and we're seeing more of it now. Although it's always been with us in some form or fashion. I was blessed to move into a ministry position in Middletown, Ohio many years ago. And Lane Sargent was my senior pastor, and he was able to impart some things into me to help me, to maintain a proper perspective and balance in things. And maybe we can talk about that later. But with that being said, I see a lot of it, especially in the position that I'm in my region alone, which is certainly not the largest region in the Church of God. I still have 475 ministers that report to me every month.
Wow.
And so when you take a number like that, obviously it's going to be more attrition than you may have in a mission state where I begun, where the ministers are a lot smaller number. Mm-hmm. But I would have to answer your question by saying absolutely. I think that the pressures of ministry, I think that the difficulties that ministers struggle with in this age of, as Daniel said, when we get closer to the Lord's coming, knowledge shall increase. Well, it has certainly done that in this world, and we are bombarded by knowledge and by media and by trying to keep up with the Joneses in ministry, and I think it's brought a lot of stress on ministers.
Man, that's a great way to put it. Do you think Daniel was talking about Google?
He didn't mention Google, but yes, I do. I think he was talking about it.
I think he might have been talking about that. And the whole notion that ministry has changed so much, the pressures of increasing. And I think of, what I teach in Ministry Oasis with regard to the marginlessness of ministry, where now it's not like you can leave the office and go home and you only have a phone on the wall. Right. You've got a phone in your pocket, and you've got the mail delivery service in your pocket, and you've got people demanding 24/7 social media interaction, and all of that is constantly grinding. Right. And so ministry is still hard, but it's uniquely hard now than it was 20 years ago. And if you're thinking about attrition increasing and ministers either morally failing, burning out, just wearing out. What do you think would be the top few reasons why today so many ministers are on the verge of getting out of ministry?
It's a great question, and I give that a little bit of thought the last couple of days when I knew we were going to do this Zoom. Let me say a word about this. Let me say a word about filling a position versus fulfilling a calling. Okay? Because I see a lot of ministers, and I don't want to sound judgmental here. It's just an observation. I see a lot of ministers that are filling the position. And when you and I got into this thing, I've been in it now 40 years. We were definitely fulfilling a calling, which I believe most ministers do. But when I sat down and talked with ministers that are falling away from the ministry, I don't mean that morally necessarily, but falling away from the ministry, I think that the unfulfilled expectations, they thought it was something. They thought it was a position that it ended up not being. It was the fulfilling of a position versus the fulfilling of a calling. And because, listen, I have never questioned that God called me. Many times, though, Steve, I've asked him why. Okay? What in the world? There's a lot of people more qualified than me, but I've always known that God called me. Yeah. And that's been the one stabilizing force. That's what gets me up in the morning. That's what makes me open my Bible. That's what makes me have a prayer life. That's what makes me do I know that God has called me. So regardless of the obstacles and the winds that blow my way, I know that this calling is not something I can leave. Okay? I can leave a position.
That's a great point.
But that's probably the first observation I would make about that. I think that another thing that happens with a lot of ministers, I had a minister call me yesterday on the road. I was coming back to Maryland, and here's his words to me. I wrote it down. He said, "I was broken, and I didn't know it."
Wow.
He said, "I was broken, and I didn't know it."
Wow.
And he had been going through so much. Things had been piling on top of one another, Yeah. And it was just getting bigger and bigger. And all of a sudden he just reached a point to where he realized, I'm not the man I used to be. I'm not where I once was. What has happened to me? So along with that, and I talk to ministers that are fighting through what I would call a betrayal of people that they have mentored. A betrayal of leaders. That's what Timothy had to deal with.
Yeah.
In 2 Timothy, Paul spends the whole book helping Timothy understand this whole principle. Timothy was frustrated. He was battling it very hard. And then I would say the deflation that comes from those unfulfilled expectations.
Yeah.
When the wind gets taken out of your sails and you're running on empty, when that happens, you get a sense of hopelessness. Like, I don't have any answers anymore.
Yeah.
These people don't need to be looking to me anymore because I feel like I'm a total failure. And it's like a dear friend of mine said, you can come talk to me about A and B in scripture, but don't talk to me about, family or things like that, because he felt like he was a failure. And I said, no, you're not.
Wow.
You just think you are, because that's the lie that Satan tells us. So I think those are some things that when you get the wind taken out of your sail, when you have poured your life into things, into people, and all of a sudden those expectations are gone, they walk out the door, they support another ministry, you get deflated and you feel hopeless and you're ready to throw in the towel.
That kind of pain is so unique to ministry. It's one thing for an accounting client to decide to go somewhere else for business, But it is a very different thing for a pastor as he has or she has poured into the life of that person, been with that person through death, been with that person through marriage, through children being born, through celebrations of anniversaries, and then all of a sudden the betrayal of that couple or person or family that just leaves you and sometimes doesn't even say goodbye. Often may not even just say, they just disappear.
We call it ghosting.
Yeah.
They ghost us.
Well, that's the modern term, of course. That's our social media term, where somebody ghosts us as pastors.
Yeah.
That betrayal and grief is deep. I think what's interesting about, as you were talking, I kept wanting to say, oh, really? You mean pastors don't get out of ministry because they didn't know how to prepare a Sunday school lesson? You mean pastors don't drop out of ministry because they couldn't figure out how to pay bills? I mean, have you ever had a minister come to you and say, hey, I'm sorry, Bishop, but I need to get out of the ministry because, I can't seem to manage the HVAC prevention contract.
Right.
Nobody ever gets out of ministry for that kind of stuff. Nobody ever gets out of ministry because they can't figure out how to do a wedding.
That's right. It's emotional. And
Yes.
it's the battle that, it's the road that the New Testament teaches us. Paul taught us the road that Satan uses to attack us. It's the road into the mind.
Yeah.
That's why, these strongholds, they start building up. That's why we have to cast down these imaginations, these things that exalt themselves against the knowledge of God. Look, I didn't know how to prepare a sermon when I got into ministry. And a lot of people today, 40 years later, would probably say he still doesn't. But with that being said, my frustrations don't come over not having 3 points and a point.
Yeah.
It's the emotional battle that you fight on a daily basis because Satan wants to plant into us a spirit of fear.
Yes.
A spirit of fear. I've said it often, anytime you feel the sense of fear, you're under spiritual attack.
Yes.
Because that doesn't come from God. God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And it's interesting that the things you're talking about are things that are simply not covered in our ministerial training.
True.
It's not like our educational systems in seminary or Bible college get into the deep emotional power of these betrayals, or as you said earlier, that sense of comparisonitis. Like we expected to be of a certain level, or we should be further along. We should have more attendance. How come I'm not doing as good as that minister down the street? Or why are people going to that church and not my church? And my ministerial training background, and as I know it today, doesn't necessarily address these kinds of things that you're talking about.
That's right. All of us started out in ministry, wanted to preach like Ray Hughes and pastor like Paula Vern Walker. We wanted to be able to do all of that. But
sure,
the truth of the matter is we are who we are. Yeah. And so those unfulfilled expectations is something that we have to battle all the time. Maybe I'm not meant to be that, but I do need to be myself.
Yeah.
Because God called me for a reason and a purpose. And there's something that God has put in me that is a benefit to the world. And if I walk away from the ministry, I'm never going to be able to be that benefit that God intended me to be. So we've got to find the avenue that a minister can take to remain healthy and whole, because we need him on the playing field and her. We need, and I want to be gender sensitive here, sure, him or her in the ministry and play the role that God has called them to play.
That's a great point. And we cannot trust that just because we have a college or a seminary degree, or just because we have ministerial credentials, that has somehow imparted to us everything we'll ever need in ministry. So what are some things that, based on your experience, what you've seen over your 40 years of ministry, what would you say are some preventative type of things that ministers should look to that they can't necessarily trust their ministerial education or training to do for them, but
Yeah.
only really learning it in the trenches can we really understand? What do you think?
Okay, thanks. And that's a great question. I think that anybody that's watching this video and is having some internal struggles, you're having sleepless nights, you're feeling restless, you're irritable more than you've ever been before, you feel powerless or you're disillusioned, maybe even you've got absenteeism going on, you don't go to the office as much as you used. Those are all symptoms. Those are all things. It's kind of like the engine check engine light on your dash of your car. When that comes on, you got two options. You can either call and take it into the shop and find out why it's on, or you can put some tape over it so you don't have to look at it anymore. You know? And how many of us in our emotional, spiritual life just put tape over the check engine light instead of really going to see what the problem is? So here's what I would say. In 1 Timothy, Paul tells Timothy how to pastor a church, how to structure the church, how to organize the church, how to train his elders. I mean, it's a powerful book. It's a how-to book. When you get to 2 Timothy, everything that Timothy had been doing as a result of 1 Timothy was starting to fall apart. There was persecution, and the people that he had mentored, the elders, had left him.
Yeah.
And when you get to 2 Timothy chapter 1, Paul says this. He says, the first thing I want you to do is rekindle the gift. He said, you got to dig in there, and you got to find that gift. Here's how he said to do it. He said, rekindle the gift through the laying on of hands. Mm-hmm. So in other words, Steve, it's going to require the support of others to get me back to where I need to be. Mm-hmm. Rekindle the gift by the laying on of hands. He didn't say lay hands on yourself, although there are times we need to do that.
Yeah, good point.
Okay, that means that I need your help when I start feeling irritable, and powerless, and disillusioned, and all those things. I need somebody to come along and to help me maybe through a covenant group. We have them here in Delmarva, D.C., in other areas. We need the support of one another. And he says, not only rekindle, then he says, hold on to the pattern of sound teaching. So he says, rekindle the gift, then hold on. Don't let go of what this book has to say. Mm-hmm. You hold on to that, because this is truth right here. This is what's going to get you back. This is the compass right here that we are all guided by. And then he says this. He says, guard the good deposit through the Holy Spirit who lives in us. So he says, rekindle the gift, hold on by the laying on of hands, or by sound teaching, and then guard the good deposit of the Holy Spirit. So how do you do that? Well, I think two words, Sabbath and sabbatical, are two good words. Okay?
Yeah.
Let's talk about Sabbath just a minute. You've taught on this a lot. You've got resources on Ministry Oasis. We need a weekly Sabbath. Mm-hmm. You're better at that, Steve, than I am. Okay? I'm not going to deceive anybody watching this video. I still struggle taking a 24-hour period and doing that. But I'm getting better at it. But to everyone here that's listening, you need a weekly time you can pull away. God established that for your life to rejuvenate, to recover, to re-energize. Good stuff. But then sabbatical. I think there comes a time in a minister's life, maybe every 3 years, I don't know, 5 years, whatever, to where you just need to get away. You need to literally get away from that ministry and recover. Okay. Yes. But there's a third word I want to use, and that's the word balance. Mm-hmm. We have to find a way to connect and get to work into harmony, our mind, our body, and our soul. Okay? Yeah. And I think the first two words help us do that, Sabbath and sabbatical. But none of that's going to happen until I determine I'm going to do it.
Good point.
I have to make a decision that I'm going to be the one to find the balance in my life.
That's right.
Now, I have gotten a lot of criticism through the years as a pastor by having a date night. I had one church, my senior adults got so mad at me because I wouldn't come to their function, but that was our date night.
Yeah.
That was their function night, but it was our date night.
Mm-hmm.
And we would use that date night. Man, I got a lot of criticism, but I stuck to it. And I think that sometimes we just have to be able to find a balance in our life. We often say our priorities are God, family, and church. Well, if we really believe that, then we will live it out.
Mm.
And we'll make the hard decisions that we need to make in order to bring balance in our life. Listen, I'm glad that I can look forward to a day off.
Yeah.
You know, I anticipate, hey, it's going to be fun. Bruce and I are going to get out. We're going to do something. We're going to enjoy, life outside of the pressures of ministry. And it's an exciting thing to look forward to. We just have to practice it.
Amen.
But it's never going to happen until we decide it's going to happen.
It's true. We own us.
Yeah.
You own you. I own me. And I can't, nobody's going to make me have Sabbath. And Jesus said that the Sabbath was created for you, not you for the Sabbath. And so the Sabbath is not a Jewish thing. It's really a matter of a rest thing in the very presence of God. Stan, I'm just so grateful for your leadership in our region, in our area, and ultimately in the Church of God denomination and outside of it. I'm really grateful for that. For all of you that are watching, if you're interested in more resources on this topic to learn how to apply these principles and put them into practice, please visit ministryoasis.com, the website, and click on resources. There's a ton of free resources that are available to you. Even a clergy burnout survey that you can take that will give you a really good snapshot of where you are right now. As Stan said earlier, there was a minister that called him and said, I didn't even know I was broken. Take that survey. If you answer it honestly, it'll be clear to you whether or not you are in danger or not. So please take Stan's advice and what I'm challenging you to do and engage ministryoasis.com for the resources that are there and take advantage of that in every way. Both Stan and myself are dedicated to supplying an oasis in this often desert vocation of ministry. Thank you, Ministry Oasis folks. Stan, thank you for joining us today and taking time out of your day to pour into ministers. So God bless you. Have a fantastic day. I look forward to more fruitfulness in your ministry because you are refreshed. God bless you. Have a great day.